Imagine stepping into a freezing Montana winter back in 1881, where the wind howls like a wild animal through the valleys. Snow piles up higher than a man's head, and folks huddle around their fires, just praying they won't run out of wood before spring thaws the ground. 'Cause out there in the Spruce Creek Valley, firewood wasn't just fuel, it was life itself. The difference between waking up warm or not waking up at all. And now picture this one guy, a newcomer named Jacob Winsel, fresh off the boat from Austria, who's got everyone scratching their heads and laughing behind his back because instead of chopping more logs like every sane settler, he's out there hauling rocks, big heavy stones from the riverbed, piling them into the floor of his brand new cabin like some kind of fool building a tomb for his own family. You see, Jacob wasn't your typical pioneer. He was a stonemason by trade, coming from generations of builders in the Bavarian Alps, where winters bite just as hard. And he carried secrets in his head that these American frontiersmen had never dreamed of. Secrets about how stone could be your best friend against the cold. But to his neighbors, it looked like pure madness, a waste of time and effort that could have gone into something useful, like reinforcing the walls or stacking cords of pine. They called it immigrant's folly, whispering that this tall, quiet man with his thick accent and calloused hands was dooming his wife Anna and their 2 young kids to a miserable, chilly death. Because who in their right mind fills the space under their floorboards with over 4,000 pounds of river rock, sandstone, and limestone, layering them just so, with the densest at the bottom to soak up the heat like a sponge, the porous ones in the middle to hold it steady, and the lighter stuff on top to spread it out. Even Thomas Bradley, the grizzled old-timer, next-door hoodie, built 17 cabins in his lifetime and knew every trick of the trade from the Oregon Trail days. He laughed the loudest, slapping his knee and saying, "Boy, bet stone S. Gone. Nah, suck the warmth right out of your room, faster than a blizzard steals your breath. Mark my words. You'll be begging for our spare logs come January." But Jacob, he didn't argue much. He'd just smile that knowing smile, remembering his grandfather's words, back in the old country, fire is quick, stone is patient. Fire burns and dies, but stone remembers. And he'd keep working, creating this clever tinch air gap beneath the planked timber floor, so the warm air from his corner fireplace, angled just right at 45 degrees, could snake underneath, heating the entire mass without a single flame touching the wood above, turning the whole floor into what we'd call today a thermal battery, storing up heat during the day and releasing it slow and steady through the night. Even Anna had her doubts at first, wringing her hands as the kids played in the dirt, wondering if her husband's old-world ways would hold up in this raw, untamed land where survival meant adapting fast or perishing. But Jacob assured her, explaining how, in the Alps, homes like this stayed cozy with half the firewood, how the stones would absorb 40,000 BTUs, from a modest, enough energy to match 5 pounds of burning wood but stretched out over 10 or 12 hours, keeping the cabin's temperature dropping only 8 to 10 degrees overnight instead of the 20 or more that plagued the others. By late October, as the first flurries dusted the pines and the family moved into their humble log home, the neighbors' chuckles turned to shakes of the head, betting among themselves that Jacob's stone-filled floor would prove a frozen disaster. But as the days grew shorter and the mercury plunged, something unexpected started to happen. Whispers of warmth, lingering longer in the Winsel cabin, and with a brutal cold snap on the horizon. The question hung in the frosty air like smoke from a dying firewood. This crazy idea saved them, or would the laughter turn to pity when the real winter roared in? As November bled into December in that harsh Montana territory of 1881, the settlers of Spruce Creek Valley braced for the inevitable, chopping wood from dawn till dusk because they knew all too well how a single storm could trap you inside for days, turning your cabin into an icy prison where every breath fogged the air and frost crept up the walls like fingers of death. But while folks like Thomas Bradley stacked their cords, high 40 pounds, a night just to keep the chill at bay, Jacob Winsel went about his days with a quieter rhythm, feeding his fireplace less fuel, yet somehow maintaining a steady glow that puzzled everyone who stopped by. Because his stone-filled floor wasn't just sitting there cold and useless. No, it was working its magic, absorbing the heat from the angled hearth where 60% warmed the room directly, 25% seeped into the stone mass below through that ingenious air gap, and only 15% escaped up the chimney. A far cry from the wasteful blazes in neighboring homes that lost half their energy to the night sky. The science behind it was simple yet profound, even if no one back then called it thermal mass. Those layered rocks, chosen for their density and porosity, acted like a giant heat reservoir, slowly taking in the warmth during the evening burn and then radiating it back out evenly over hours. So when Bradley's cabin cooled from 65 degrees to 45 by morning, forcing him to wake, shivering, and stoke the fire again, Jacob's place dipped only to the mid-50s, the floor itself staying toasty at around 68 degrees, warm enough for the kids to play barefoot without a complaint, and Anna, who'd fretted so much during the build, now baked bread on that gentle heat, marveling at how they burned just 30 pounds of wood nightly instead of 40, stretching their supplies further in a land where every log meant hours of back-breaking labor. But the real trial came in early January, 1882, when a savage cold snap gripped the valley like an iron fist. Temperatures plummeting to 18 below zero for 72 relentless hours. Winds whipping snow into drifts that buried doors and paths. And suddenly, what had been mild teasing turned into desperate survival as neighbors' woodpiles dwindled faster than expected. Bradley, ever the proud one, found himself rationing sticks, his cabin dropping to 41 degrees despite constant tending. The family bundling in every blanket they owned, coughing from the smoke and exhaustion, while over at the Winsels, that patient stone floor released its stored 36,000 BTUs like a faithful guardian, holding the interior at a comfortable 57 degrees, even as the outside world froze solid. No need for midnight fire poking, just peaceful sleep and mornings where the warmth lingered like a promise kept. On the third night, January 4th, with the thermometer hitting 22 below and Bradley's place chilling to a bone-numbing 38 degrees, his wife and kids huddled, miserable and scared. He swallowed his pride and trudged through the drifts to knock on Jacob's door, where Anna welcomed them in with hot stew. And as the heat from the floor seeped through their boots, Bradley knelt down, touched the planks in awe, and muttered, "I was wrong. Jacob, this ain't folly, it's a miracle." His voice cracking with the weight of it all, realizing how this immigrant's old wisdom had outsmarted their American grit, saving not just wood but lives in the process. By morning, as the families shared stories and the cold lingered outside, the word began to spread like wildfire through the snowbound community. Folks wondering if this stone trick could change everything. But with more winter ahead and supplies running low, the big question loomed: how far would this innovation go? And would it transform the way these hardy pioneers faced the frozen frontier forever? In the aftermath of that brutal January cold snap in 1882, as the sun finally peeked through the clouds and the snow began to melt in Spruce Creek Valley, Thomas Bradley didn't waste a single day. He tore up his own cabin floor with a newfound zeal, hauling in stones just like Jacob had taught him, layering them dense to light with that crucial air gap for circulation. And by February, his family was sleeping, sounder than ever. Their wood consumption dropping a whopping 40%, sometimes up to 60% in the deepest freezes, because now he understood the beauty of it all, how the stone-filled floor turned a simple hearth into an efficient machine that stored heat like a bank saves gold, releasing it slow and sure when the flames died down, keeping temperatures stable and folks healthy in a time when pneumonia stalked the weak like a shadow in the woods. Jacob, ever the humble teacher, shared his secrets. Freely, no patents or profits, just neighborly advice drawn from his alpine roots where such methods had warmed homes for centuries. Explaining to anyone who'd listen how to sort the rocks for maximum effect, how the fireplace angle maximized airflow, and how even in Montana's rugged terrain, local sandstone and river pebbles could mimic the Bavarian granites his grandfather swore by. And soon enough, by late 1882, 11 cabins within a 30-mile radius had adopted the technique, some tweaking it with bricks for easier installation or adding clay seals to trap more heat, turning what started as mockery into a quiet revolution that rippled through trading posts and campfires, with records from Fort Benton noting a dip in firewood sales and lantern oil as families burned less through the nights. This wasn't just about staying warm, it was a lifeline in the American West, where immigrants like Jacob brought old-world ingenuity to clash and blend with frontier necessity, saving labor that could go toward farming or mining instead of endless chopping. And in extreme winters, it meant the difference between thriving families and tragic losses, as Bradley himself documented in his journal, tallying a 35 to 45% reduction in fuel across the adopters, numbers that spread via word of mouth to distant valleys, influencing homesteaders as far as Wyoming and Idaho by 1883, where variations popped up like heated benches or full-room stone beds that held warmth for days. Even as modern stoves and coal heaters crept in during the early 1900s, Jacob's method lingered in remote areas, a testament to practical wisdom over flashy invention, with his original cabin standing proud until 1923 when it was dismantled for a new ranch, but folks who took apart the floor found the stones still solid, still capable of holding heat as if echoing that first winter's triumph. And today, while we cozy up with central heating and forget the struggles, echoes of this story live on in modern radiant floor systems or rocket mass heaters that builders use in off-grid homes, proving that sometimes the foolish ideas are the ones that endure. Warming, not just bodies, but the spirit of innovation passed down through generations. If you've ever wondered how a simple rock could outsmart a blizzard, or if stories like Jacob's fire you up about hidden history in the wilderness, hit that like button, subscribe for more tailies from the old trail, and drop a comment below. What's the craziest survival hack you've heard from the past? Let's keep these whispers alive together.